Benjamin Netanyahu. Suit and tie, focused eyebrows, determined and fierce disposition, patriotism running through his veins, and for the world, a lesson or a warning, whichever side you are on. Netanyahu, or Bibi as they like to fondly call him, is the most significant leader of 21st century Israel. He fights his battles not like an idealist, but a realist. He knows his primary job is to defend the Jewish state. And like a military commander, he leads his country out of the darkness around it without sparing a care for his own image. In the process, the world around him is shaken. No one but Israelis can tell him what to do and how. Hi, and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Shubhangi, and in this video, I shall tell you about a recent fiery speech by Netanyahu which has sent shockwaves around the world. Let's begin. Joe Biden did not want to call Netanyahu after coming to power. But now he is blowing up Netanyahu's phone and pleading for a de-escalation between Israel and Palestine. The American president has called the Israeli prime minister 4 times since the Israel-Gaza hostilities started on May 10th. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has rejected a ceasefire. Netanyahu said that right now Israel is engaged in forceful deterrence, but the Jewish nation is not ruling out anything, including conquering Gaza. Netanyahu made these remarks during a speech schooling a gathering of 70 foreign ambassadors and diplomats about how Hamas is an evil organization that uses civilians as human shields.
They murder any civilians they can get their hands on. And they use civilians they target civilians while hiding behind civilians, using them, as you know, as human shields. We'll have more to say about that.
He also described criticism against Israel as the height of hypocrisy and stupidity. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, himself a former commander in the Israeli Defense Forces, actually spoke like more of a military commander during his speech to foreign diplomats at the Israeli army headquarters in Tel Aviv. Netanyahu said,
"You can either conquer them, and that's always an open possibility, or you can deter them. And we are engaged right now in forceful deterrence, but I have to say, we don't rule out anything."
A visibly angry Netanyahu also pushed back against questions as to how long the operation will go on. He said, "We aren't standing with a stopwatch. We are concerned with the objectives of the operation. Previous operations lasted a long time, so it is not possible to set a time frame." Presently, Israel has mobilized its military, including tanks, artillery, and infantry units at the Gaza border. And from Netanyahu's briefing to a gathering of diplomats from countries like the US, the European Union, India, Russia, China, Germany, Austria, Australia, Japan, the UK, Brazil, Canada, and Italy, it seems that he has no plans of succumbing to mounting international pressure against Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister accused Hamas and other militant groups of provoking the ongoing round of hostilities. He also slammed international propaganda against Israeli military actions and said that the Jewish nation hoped to restore quiet quickly. To counter naive propaganda about war crimes, Netanyahu also showed a video of an airstrike being aborted at the last minute because there were children in the area.
There are probably children there, so we're not going to do it.
And then the Israeli Prime Minister really exposed how Palestinian militant groups work. He said that Hamas targets civilians while hiding behind civilians, using them as human shields. This is the problem that we face because Hamas is embedded deeply in civilian areas because it uses civilian human shields. The Israeli Prime Minister made it clear that his country targets its enemies with great precision. But he explained, military action is not a surgical operation as it is. Even in a surgical room in a hospital, you don't have the ability to prevent collateral damage around an infected tissue. Even then, you can't. Certainly, in a military operation, you cannot. Netanyahu saved the fiercest of his remarks for Israel's detractors. He said, Instead of having the perpetrators who commit double war crimes, who are hiding behind civilians and firing at civilians, not having them criticized but having you criticized is the height of hypocrisy and stupidity. What that does is in fact encourage the terrorists. It gives support, it gives encouragement to the terrorists, and that is something that is bad for each one of us. The Israeli Prime Minister added,
frankly, an open message, and I'm not shy about saying it openly. I think you should support Israel strongly, because this is not merely a question of Israel's security, it's a question of our common security and our common interests in the Middle East.
Netanyahu is thus going to carry on the military offensive against Hamas, and if need be, he will order a ground invasion into the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Prime Minister is looking to degrade Hamas's capabilities and willpower. The Israel Defense Forces have actually targeted and damaged the metro, an underground network of tunnels dug up in Gaza, which are used by Hamas as defensive positions. Netanyahu himself said that Israeli bombardment has set Hamas back by many years. Now, more assaults are likely to further turn the clock back on Hamas. The fact that the Prime Minister does not rule out conquering Gaza has sent shockwaves around the world. Netanyahu is successfully leading his country out of a dark period. Despite all the international pressure against him, the Israeli Prime Minister is annihilating Hamas once and for all.